I bow to the Almighty in my mind, speech and body. Vanakkam, a quick recap. We are learning the 247 Ezhuthukkal or the alphabets of the Tamil language. They are classified into Mudal or the foundation letters and Sar or the dependent letters. The Mudal Ezhuthukkal are further classified into Uyir Ezhuthukkal or the life letters and the Mei Ezhuthukkal or the body letters. The Uyir Ezhuthukkal are 12 in number from A to Au and they are compared to the vowels of the English language. The Mei Ezhuthukkal are 18 in number and they are the equivalent of consonants of the English language, and they are subdivided into 6 Mellinam hard consonants, 6 Mellinam or the soft consonants, and the 6 Idayinam or the medial consonants. When pronouncing the Mei Ezhuthukkal, the air that comes from inside is blocked and released through the mouth or the nose. The 6 Mellinam Ezhuthukkal in the order of their birth are Ik, Ich, It, It, Ip and Ir. And we use the corresponding Uyir Mei Ezhuthukkal to form a mnemonic Ka, Sa, Da, Ta, Pa, Ra to remember them. Today we will move to the Mei Ezhuthukkal. The Mellina Mei Ezhuthukkal or the soft consonants are 6 in number and they all have a dot on them in the written form. In pronouncing these Mellina Ezhuthukkal, we will block the air and release it through the nose while saying the Ezhuthu. And because we are releasing the air through the nose, the harshness of the Ezhuthukkal are reduced and we get the soft nasal sound of the Mellina Mei Ezhuthukkal or the soft consonants. Just as how we arrange the Mellina Ezhuthukkal in the order of their birth from the back of the mouth, we will arrange the Mellina Mei Ezhuthukkal in the order of their birth from the back of the mouth. The first Mellina Mei Ezhuthu is Ing, as the ING in sing, Ing, and this is how it looks. This Ezhuthu is born in the far end of the mouth in the same place where the Mellinam Ezhuthu Ik was born. We allow the rear end of the tongue to touch the roof of the mouth. Now we block the air and allow some of it to come through the nose while saying the Ezhuthu, like this, Ing. Notice the air that comes out of the nose, Ing. Because we are letting out some of the air through the nose, we have that nasal sound, Ing. To indicate the place of the birth, I am placing this Ezhuthu in the far end in the figure. Let's move to the next Ezhuthu. The second Mellina Mei Ezhuthu is Inge, as the INGE in hinge, Inge, and this is how it looks. This Ezhuthu is born when the middle portion of the tongue touches the roof of the mouth. So in the order of the birth, I have placed it after the Ing in the figure. Now in some places, this Ezhuthu is also pronounced as Ing, Ing, as the IGN in the French word mignon, mignon. Mignon means tender or small or dainty in French, like the filet mignon. So this Ezhuthu is pronounced as the Ing or Inge. Let's move to the next Ezhuthu. The third Mellina Mei Ezhuthu is In, as the IN in bin, but with a little more pressure on the N, In. This Ezhuthu is born when the tip of the tongue touches the front portion of the palate, but with some added pressure on the N, In. As you can see, this In has 3 loops or 3 knots in the written form. Now in Tamil, a knot is called as Suri, Suri, Suri. And the Tamil word for the number 3 is Moondru formally or Moonu informally. Now if you can recall, the formal Tamil is what we find in the written works and the informal Tamil is a loose version of the formal Tamil and it is widely used in the spoken form. So Moondru is the proper way of saying the number 3 and Moonu is the informal way of saying the number 3. So this In, which has the 3 knots or the 3 knotted In, is also referred to as the மூன்று சுழி in formally or மூணு சுழி in informally. Let's move to the next எழுத்து. The fourth Mellinam Mei Ezhuthu is ind, as the INDH ind in Sindh. Sindh is the name of a river, Sindh. So now we place the tip of the tongue on the back side of the teeth on the upper jaw and say ind. And this is how it looks. So in the order of the birth, I have placed it after the மூன்று சுழி in the figure. And after the teeth, we have our lips, and now we are going to use this to create our fifth Mellinam Mei Ezhuthu. When we block the air here and make a nasal sound, we get the எழுத்து im. Im as the IM in dim. And in the order of the birth, I have placed this எழுத்து after the ind in the figure. We'll move to the next எழுத்து. The sixth and the last Mellinam Mei Ezhuthu is in. This எழுத்து is born when the tip of the tongue touches the tip of the palate. This in is similar to the three looped in the place of the birth, but the difference is the pressure is less when pronouncing this in, and this is pronounced gently. It has only two loops or two knots in the written form. So we refer to this as the two knotted in. The number 2 is called as இரண்டு formally or ரெண்டு informally. So this in is referred to as the இரண்டு சுழி in or ரெண்டு சுழி in. சுழி means knot, as we saw for the மூன்று சுழி in. So now we have learned all the 6 Mellinam Mei Ezhuthu as ing, inj, in, ind, im, in. Once again, ing, inj, in, ind, im, in. And now we will form a mnemonic to remember the series. Oh, and this is not just my mnemonic, this is the generally accepted mnemonic. Now to form the mnemonic, we use the corresponding உயிர் மெய் எழுத்து. All the மெய் எழுத்துக்கள் have a dot on them, and when the dot is removed, it becomes the உயிர் மெய் எழுத்து, and the R sound gets attached to the end. So now the ing without the dot becomes nga, nga, as the nga in Bengal, nga. The inj without the dot becomes nya, nya, as the nio in onion. When you say onion, nya. The in without the dot becomes na, with more pressure on the n, na. Now in English, we don't have different n sounds or na sounds. So I'm just going to say the na in banana, but with a bit more pressure on the n, na. The ind without the dot becomes na. With the tip of the tongue against the back of the teeth in the upper jaw, we say na. The m without the dot becomes ma, as the ma in drama, ma. And finally, the in without the dot becomes na. We say this gently, as the na in banana, but with a gentle pressure on the n. So now we are ready to make the mnemonic as nga, nya, na, na, ma, na. Nga, nya, na, na, ma, na. Nga, nya, na, na, ma, na is the mnemonic, and this is used only to remember the series of the Mellinam Mei Ezhuthukkal. So when we have to recollect the Mellinam Mei Ezhuthukkal, we remember nga, nya, na, na, ma, na, and put a dot on each syllable, and we arrive at ing, inj, in, ind, im, and in. So for the Vallina Ezhuthukkal, we use the mnemonic kasada tapara, and now for the Mellinam Mei Ezhuthukkal, we have nga, nya, na, na, ma, na. So now we have learned all the 6 Mellina Mei Ezhuthukkal and the mnemonic to remember the series. So now we will see how to write these Ezhuthukkal. Let's start with the first Mellina Mei Ezhuthu, ing. To write this, we start with a standing line. Take off your hand, draw a sleeping line, take off your hand, draw a small standing line and continue the stroke to a semicircle. And continue this to a sleeping line and go up in the standing line. Take off your hand and put a dot on the top. This is the Ezhuthu ing. Let's try this again. Standing line, sleeping line, a smaller standing line with a semicircle. Continue that to a sleeping line and go up in a standing line and put a dot on the top. And this is the first Mellina Mei Ezhuthu ing. The second Mellina Mei Ezhuthu is inch. So to write this, we start with a small circle that goes clockwise. Continue the stroke to a sleeping line and take off your hand. Draw a standing line and take off your hand. And we draw a semicircle here and put a dot on the top. This is the Ezhuthu inch. Let's try this again. We start with a small circle that goes clockwise. Continue the stroke to a sleeping line. Take off your hand, draw a standing line. Take off your hand and draw a semicircle, take off your hand and put a dot on the top. This is the second Mellina Mei Ezhuthu inch. We will move to the next Ezhuthu. So when I recall the mnemonic, I have nga, nya, na, or the moondru suri in. So this in has 3 knots. We will start with the first knot as a small circle that goes clockwise. Continue the stroke to a second knot or the second circle. Continue this to a third circle and extend it to a sleeping line. Take off your hand and draw a standing line and put a dot on the top. And this is the moondru suri in. Let's try this one more time. We start with a small circle that goes clockwise. Continue the stroke to draw another circle. Continue the stroke to another circle and continue the stroke to a sleeping line and take off your hand and draw a standing line. Put a dot on the top and this is the moondru suri in. Let's move to the next Ezhuthu, nga, nya, na, na. So in the. So we start with a small standing line. Take off your hand and draw a sleeping line and take off your hand. Draw a standing line. Now go up in a small semicircle and continue the stroke to form a nice hook. Take off your hand and put a dot on the top. This is the Ezhuthu ind. Let's try this again. We start with a standing line, sleeping line, standing line, a small semicircle and continue this to a hook. And we put a dot on the top and this is the Ezhuthu ind. So nga, nya, na, na, ma. Ma. So im is the next Ezhuthu. So to write in, we start with a standing line, sleeping line, go up and draw a semicircle, take off your hand and put a dot on the top. This is the Ezhuthu im. Let's try this again. We start with a standing line, sleeping line and we draw a semicircle here and we put a dot on the top and this is the Ezhuthu im. Nga, nya, na, na, ma, na. After im we have the irandu suri in. So just as before, but instead of the 3 knots, we will draw only 2 knots. So we start with a small circle that goes clockwise. Continue the stroke to another circle. Continue the stroke to a sleeping line. Take off your hand and draw a standing line and put a dot on the top. And this is the Ezhuthu in. Let's try this again. We start with a small circle that goes clockwise. Continue the stroke to another circle. Continue the stroke to a sleeping line. Take off your hand and draw a standing line and put a dot on the top. And this is the Ezhuthu in or the irandu suri in. So now we have learned all the 6 Mellina Mei Ezhuthukkal as ing, inch, moondru suri in, ind, im and irandu suri in. And these 6 are the Mellina Mei Ezhuthukkal. I encourage you to practice these at home, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you. Nandri Vanakkam.